Hey guys, this is Randy. Look, I wanted to take a minute just to share an opinion with you on a matter that I think is important to United Methodists and people interested in the LGBT, what I call non-tragedy of 2019. I think you'll agree there's some merit to the opinion, and I just thought it was important enough to share it. First off, this is my opinion, not the opinion of any representative I've seen of the United Methodist Church. I think the most essential point to start with is I've been a Methodist for a couple of decades now, and my observation is that you are welcome at the United Methodist Church if you sincerely want to grow closer to God or to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. What happens at the United Methodist Church is the people there seek to grow closer to God, and that growing closer is a lifelong journey of finding what separates them from God and removing it from their lives. And that something is defined as sin. In fact, it is a pretty good definition of sin as anything that separates us from God or separates you from God. And we discover that sin and root it out of our lives through prayer-guided discernment of the Holy Spirit. It's a personal, lifelong journey. And we are individually responsible for identifying our sin, repenting of it, and removing it from our lives. So this welcome to the United Methodist Church that I mentioned certainly welcomes you to participate in that process, or to simply attend the services. And if this is not your approach to your Christianity and your faith system, then that's certainly fine too. I will mention the United Methodists are. People poke fun at them for being the non-committal Methodist. And churches that I'll say are sterner about their identification of sin and pointing each other's sins out. The Methodists tend not to be that way, and they're viewed as a very accepting church, and it's one reason for this controversy that led to what I call the non-tragedy. And I think it's extraordinarily important, and you'll see this in Methodist churches as well, is that we do believe in a God that brings order and unity to the universe. So that is one of the key attributes of God. That's essential to the conversation here. People who come to United Methodist churches with an activist position, primarily as an activist, as opposed to a Christian seeking to grow closer to God and to be a disciple of Christ, and to come to the church and demand that some other people at the church set aside their personal identification of sin and adopt the activist definition of sin. In other words, it's okay for homosexuals to be in the pulpit as clergy, as spiritual leaders, because homosexuality is not a sin or even should be celebrated. Those activist positions are behaviors that are not compatible with a God of order and unity, especially if the person or the people are deliberately bringing disorder and unity within the congregation. It's important to recognize that this identification of sin is a personal journey, and it's really not appropriate for a person who come to the United Methodist Church full of people looking for sin in their lives and to say to them, oh, what you consider a sin is not valid. My position is the legitimate position, and this church is, this church is illegitimate unless you adopt my position. That seems to have been the position of these activist LGBT activists. And a message to those folks: if you feel strongly on the matter, it's fine to feel strongly about it. What's not fine is to demand that other people accept your definition of sin. And if a person is unwilling to accept your definition of sin, it doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean that that they're a bigot or that they're hate-filled. It just means that they disagree with you in their journey, in their personal spiritual journey. Most Christians I know truly are trying to pray or prayerfully be guided by the Holy Spirit and the discernment of the Holy Spirit. And your opinion's welcome, but your guidance to replace the Holy Spirit is not. Then finally, anytime there's deliberate agitation and division within a congregation, which seems to be a tactic that has been used in this decades-long controversy now about LGBT clergy and gay marriage at the United Methodist Church, this deliberate agitation and division is not appropriate, and it really doesn't pass the test. Is this from God? A God of order and unity does not bring agitation and division within a congregation. So, you wonder, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? And why would somebody call this a non-tragedy? The simple truth is, in our culture, there are centrist people today that I would view as centrist, and they're liberals, what some folks might call John F. Kennedy liberals. and conservatives who are actually very closely aligned in most of their opinions. John Wesley says, if we agree on the essentials of faith, then take my hand. And those essentials are, as I've stated, that we want to be disciples of Jesus Christ, as Methodists put it, for the transformation of the world. So if we can agree on the essentials of faith, take my hand. The problem is that culturally we have radical positions, radical left and radical right, that are very tempting for new. In fact, they're irresistible for our news media outlets and individuals like myself who want to comment on their observations. And unfortunately, it appears that the mass media and the mass information moving around tends to focus and give voice to this radical left position. It's important to recognize that if a person is on the radical left, anyone to the right of them looks to them like a radical right position, and that includes the John F. Kennedy liberals, which I suspect I'm probably one of those, and the right. All of that looks like radical right to a person on the radical left. If you'd like to understand, and by the way, the United Methodist Church has taken the position that this centrist view that includes liberal and conservative centrist view is the biblical in nature, because we're a biblical country, the foundings and the foundations of it. And the radical left position is being identified correctly, in my opinion, as an agitating activist position with the intent of bringing division to the church. So the hand-wringing, and if you're feeling angst and hand-wringing and you wonder when this problem's ever going to be solved, from the view of the radical left, it will never be solved. And you can meet them halfway and move your church or a congregation or a business or an organization far to the left of the traditional left, and they still won't be happy. The agitation and the division and the hate-filled rhetoric will continue. It's what they're trained to do, and it's how they do what they do, by drawing attention to themselves. And we live in a time where it's irresistible to the media. If you're interested in understanding how we got to this point as a culture, I put on the screen here, you can freeze this. I strongly suggest, I'll actually put the links below as well, some links you can watch in a total, I guess, of about 30 minutes and get an insight of some of the most brilliant minds of our time who are basically ignored. And they tend to fall in that more centrist view of the left and the right from the center. And these are some brilliant people. If you haven't heard these names, it's worth your time to spend a few minutes. And I've selected some short videos and concepts that will be useful to understand how we got here, and it's likely to give you some insights on what you can do about it as a culture. Thank you.